Hello everyone, let's go ahead and take another art break, and today we're going to be working on creating this adorable Calico kitty who happens to be wearing a headband that has rabbit ears with cute little carrot treats hanging off of them. I did a little play on words with this one. It says Happy Meowie Easter. I'm going to walk you through the watercolor steps, and then at the end I'm going to show you how you can use some gel sparkly pens to add a little bit of colorful magic, as well as using some permanent markers to add some details. For those of you who like to paint along with me but drawing's not your thing, I got you covered. I have a sketchbook membership. That's where I have all of the line drawings that you can use to create them with, and then go right ahead and paint and trace and then paint and come along and create with me. I'm going to have a QR code right there. You can click that. That'll lead you right on over there. It's super inexpensive to join, and it's really I appreciate all of those who support my channel by becoming sketchbook members. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I can't wait to show you how to create this sweet little Calico kitty and her fun little rabbit ears. This painting is super quick to do. It has some really fun details in it, but just some basic painting of watercolor. I'm going to mix up my three colors of my cat first, so I'm choosing kind of a rusty caramel look, a black, and just a little bit of burnt umber that I'm going to water down a lot to be able to put in my white areas. These are kind of the traditional colors for a calico cat. When painting the watercolor, I want to do one area and then move to another area that is more dry. If I work wet on wet in those different areas, my colors will just blend all together, and I want to keep them separate. So first I did the rusty caramel area, and then I went over to the black area. There's going to be enough dry paper in between those two areas so my paint won't mix together. I'm basically just layering on a color and then coming back into that area while it's still wet and tapping in just a little bit more darker color around the edges. And because the paper is already wet underneath there with color, those colors should be drawn to the middle and kind of make a really pretty little watercolor blend. If you find that your colors aren't blending enough, you can always go back in with just a clean bit of water and tap those areas so that will draw the color together. I'm going to pop up and do the carrots and give those two spots on my face plenty of time to dry. I'm just using a bright shade of orange for my carrots. Now I'm going to be switching my color palette because if you've been watching me, you know that I have my little set that I like to use for the bright shades of pink and the light pastel colors in there. I'm going to start out with making this little kitty's nose a bright shade of pink. And then for the inside of the ears, I just picked up a little peachy color that's in my set, and I'm going to be doing a peach color in the centers. And while that peach color is still wet, I'm going to be picking up that bright shade of pink, like what I had put on the nose, and I'm going to be tapping in just a little bit of pink in that area. And those colors should blend nicely because the color underneath is wet, and I'm putting wet paint on top. I'm going to be basically doing the same idea on the muzzle of my kitty. I'm starting with that lighter peach color and brushing that in. I'm going to be tapping in just a little bit of pink. I'm going to be dulling down this area just a little bit with my burnt umber once it all dries, but I'm going to start with these lighter, brighter colors underneath first. You can see me go ahead and rinse my brush off, and then I gave it a squeeze, and that just takes the water out, and that helps me blend my colors when I'm on the top. You could soften your line, works this way. I'm using a student grade watercolor paper, so sometimes the lines don't want to soften as well because there's not as much cotton in the student grade paper, but I can get a very soft look if I dip and clean my brush off in clear water and then give it a squeeze and then come back and kind of just softly tickle those areas, and that'll blend my colors together. Now it's time to put a little bit of that watered down, less than tea even, to those white areas. When you're doing a white area with watercolor, it's a great idea to put in a shadow so then your white areas do look a little bit more white. So I'm taking this very watered down burnt umber color to create little shadow looks on the white part of my kitty. Now to do the inside of the rabbit ears, I'm going to do the same technique that I used on the inside of the kitty ears by first putting on the peach and then tapping in a little bit of the pink. I like to put that pink, that darker shade of pink, around one edge. So one edge will have more of the peach color and the other edge will have more of the pink color, and that just gives it kind of a nice shadow. Now my painting has had plenty of time to dry, so I can come back in and take a look at where I need to add another layer of color. Usually when I do a watercolor, I'm doing at least 2 layers and most likely maybe even 3. On this one, since it's such a quick little painting, I'm doing about 2 layers of the colors. Black is a little tricky. Make sure you go slow in this area. You don't want to get too dark too quick or you won't be able to see any of your layers. So layer on the color, let it dry, and then come back in. You can see me just brushing in a real light layer again on that burnt umber, kind of more like on the edges or around the outside of the areas I painted. And I put that color in, but I'm going to also wash my brush off in clean water, give it a squeeze, and then kind of come back and manipulate any of those areas that I might need to soften my lines. For the outside of my rabbit ears, I have a gray in my set, and I've just watered that down too to about coffee consistency, and I'm going to paint the ears. I'll end up putting a couple layers of that gray on there too to add some definition of color to the rabbit ears. I'm using a number 6 round brush to create this painting with. It's a nice small brush to be able to do these small details. When you're applying your paint, if you get too much on there and you need to lift your paint, rinse your brush out in clean water, give your brush a squeeze, and then you can lift some of the color if you need to. I'm going to add another additional layer of color onto the carrots. This time I'm choosing one side to add the dark area to. So I've chosen the left side just to add more dimension and shape and contour to my carrots. Since I'm using a student grade paper, it does dry fairly fast, and I'm going to layer in another layer of the gray paint. This time I'm trying to choose just maybe some areas where I want it to be darker, so I'm going to choose the inside of that gray area to be able to put some gray in there to make it a little bit darker. These little carrots need some green tops. I'm just choosing a bright green in my set and just topping in little dashes of green to go on the very top. Now that my cat has had plenty of time to dry, I can go ahead and work on that headband. I've drawn the pattern so that it has enough room to do and spacing to do 3 colors. Whatever color I start with, that's the color I'm going to end with. I like to have that pattern where it starts and it ends with the same look. I like to encourage everyone to use your own creativity and color combinations any way you would like. So go ahead and play with your color combinations, especially if you're in my sketchbook membership. You can trace out 2 at the same time and then paint them at the same time. It's a great opportunity to play with colors and try out different watercolor techniques. This is where you're going to see me take a little bit more of that watered down burnt umber color and putting that over the muzzle just a little bit to kind of tone that color down so it's not so bright and colorful. I want its nose to be bright and colorful, but I want that area there to be a little bit more subtle, and adding that just little slight tone of the burnt umber over top. Because it's watercolor, I'm still going to see the colors underneath, but I'm adding a little bit of tint onto that area. For the headband, I had chosen to do kind of a pink and a light blue shade of color. I had already put on the pink and the blue. I probably pushed it a little bit by adding the pink and the blue so close together while they were wet. But you could just put in one color at a time and let them dry. But I did put the 2 colors in, and then I went back in and added just another tap of those colors in those areas to make them a little darker. But before I added the orange on, I did give it a dry so I wouldn't have all my colors mixing together on the headband. I've just about got all the watercolor steps done. It's important to let your painting dry so you can see if you have enough dark and light areas. And if you feel like they got enough dark and light, then go ahead and stop, but you can always add another layer if you would like. To create the background for this little character, I'm not going to add any watercolor. I'm just going to be using some permanent markers. I bought these markers at Walmart, and they have 2 tips on them. One's a rounded end, and one has a chisel end on it. The rounded end works perfect for adding small little dots. So I'm just choosing 3 different colors, a pink, an orange, and a blue. That kind of goes with the headband colors as well. For the lettering, I'm going to be using a gel pen that happens to have a little bit of glitter on the inside. I bought this set at Walmart. When using a gel pen, there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind. Gel pens dry a lot slower than some other mediums do, especially a lot slower than the permanent marker that I just used. You need to make sure that your pencil is erased fairly lightly before you go over the top, because you're not going to want to try to erase over top of the gel pen. There's a chance that it might smear. The other thing to keep in mind is that because it does stay wet for so long, you want to make sure your hand isn't dragging over any area that you just worked on. But other than that, they are super fun to use. They have that small little pen end on it, and they make lettering so easy and fun to add just a little bit of glitter without having a lot of glitter mess. I added a little bit of extra glitter pen work onto the headband, and I even added just a tiny bit of that glitter sparkle on his nose. Before I even started doing the painting, I had already done some micron pen work on this piece, but now I wanted to come back and add just a little bit more scribbly bits and darken up some of my black lines. I don't show it in the video, but I actually go back and use a Sharpie ultra fine point marker for those eye areas. The patches of colors for the eyes were a lot darker, and in order for that black to really show up to see the eyes, I needed to make them a little bit thicker. I go back in and add just a few more scribbly bits to the outside and on the inside, just to give my kitty a little bit more of a furry look. I also used a little bit of my white gel pen just to come in and add just a few little kind of scribbles and little highlights on the top. I always like to add just a little bit of white just to bring some fun little highlights. And I do some little scribble marks on his nose too. As a final touch, I wanted to add a darker border around my painting, but I didn't want it to be black. I have a color called Hickory Smoke in the Distress Rangers ink. It's a great color. It looks black when it's wet, but when it dries, it's really kind of just a pretty shade of gray. I thought it looked really well since the rabbit's ears were done in gray. Well, she's just about done, and I think it looks cute as can be. So let's take a look at what she looks like sitting in my studio amongst some of the other spring paintings that I've already completed on my channel. And here they are. If you enjoyed doing whimsical characters as much as I do, you definitely want to click the playlist to check out the rest of the paintings in this little series. And here's my little kitty. She's looking adorable as can be with those fun little smiling style eyes and that cute little headband. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. It really does help YouTube push my channel out there. Well, thanks for joining me, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.